Episode number 27 with Mr. Jason McCoy. I've known Jason for a very long time. I used to perform in his band for many, many years. And I went up to his house and we sat around for the afternoon and did this podcast and reminisced about the good old days. And Jason is a super guitar player, singer-songwriter, amazing entertainer as well. And he's constantly has something on the go. Always impressed with Jason. Make sure you sit back or listen. We go back through his whole career and talk about life from the beginning up until now. I know you're going to really like this one. Here's Mr. Jason McCoy. Did you find...
Record.
Yeah.
Great.
I'll edit. We're getting some good shit.
Please. Yeah. I think we're done here. I think you're very done.
Outtakes. Did you find when you started doing radio that you felt you had to do
the radio voice?
Yeah. Did you automatically get in front of the mic and feel like it was, or did you just do your?
Yeah, I think when I here's the thing, when I started doing radio, it was because I was an artist and I, for some reason, really enjoyed the interviews almost more than just promoting the records. I really enjoyed radio. So you go in and you talk to the DJs, and of course you're talking about the show or the record, whatever you're promoting. But I really got into the comedy of doing morning shows are all about the fun, right? So I really got into that, and I'd spar with them kind of on a comedic level, and I really kind of hit it off with a few people. So when some DJs would go on holidays in different markets, I'd get invited to, hey, you want to sit in with the morning show when so-and-so's off, or in the midday show or whatever. Yeah. So I kind of got into it very slowly, which made it not a big jump, so I didn't have to put on a thing, right? Yeah. I didn't try to get in as a radio guy, and so I was just myself from the beginning, and that was good. But then when it came to doing radio full time, what I did find was that every 15-second break or 60-second break, I felt like I had to get everything in the world in. You know, so it's like, well, yeah, actually, we were at the Winter Carnival coming up Friday, and then also in the news, I saw that Donald Trump did this, and there's a new car out. Tesla has a new car. It's just like, holy smokes, man! Lay off the caffeine, and that was the new guy issue I had to overcome, and it was, just being yourself more. Things that interest you. You got to talk about things that interest you too, right? And it can't just be stuff you put on, or otherwise you think you got to cram everything into 60 seconds.
It gives a new respect for, if you listen to, I'm not sure if you've ever been a Howard Stern fan, but I always have.
Oh, yeah.
Someone like him who sits for 4 hours and just talks.
Oh, yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. Well, he's got producers too and writers who come up with, the thematic idea for the show. And
he's interviewing people, but still.
He probably did that in the early days all on his own too. Like he's just got that gift of gab and holding an audience. Yeah. I don't know if I could do that. It really depends on your co-host too. I got a great co-host on Kicks, and it's that's what makes the show, right? Is the banter back and forth. Yeah. But there's other people, like I listen to a lot of talk radio. I always have anyway. Yeah. Me too. And it depends on the subject, really. I mean, not just the subject, but how the person engages. I always like those shows like Prairie Home Companion or Vinyl Cafe and things like that. Yeah. But they weren't, just sitting for 4 hours and rambling. But there's certainly a show to it, a variety show of radio, if you will. And I always like that. But it's also how those guys told those stories, right? Yeah. Like, who is the guy, Paul? The rest of the story. I can't remember his last name. But like when that would come on the radio, and this is something you're taught in radio, is every break should be your break and selling to the next thing so people stay, right? Yeah. Like, hey, coming up just after, Dierks Bentley, we're going to be talking blah, blah, blah. And that was one of those things, one of those tidbits on radio that I always, you'd sit in your car in the parking lot and wait, coming back after the break, we'll tell you the rest of the story. And then you'd wait because it was the way he told it too. Yeah. You may have even known about the story, but you wanted to hear what his take was.
Yeah. So, total engaging.
Personality's king.
Yeah.
I wish I had some, but you can buy that. I import
Amazon, I think.
Amazon, sure.
Comes in the mail the next day.
That's right.
A new personality.
A new personality. Great.
So we're rolling, obviously. We started chatting. Here with Jason McCoy. we've known each other for a long time. I was thinking on the way up, how we actually originally met. And as far as I could remember, the first time I remember kind of meeting and chatting with you was at a Fair Board convention. In Toronto. That was my earliest kind of memories.
The first time we met, I don't remember meeting you so much, but was that before or after the Sports World thing? Because I did a couple of songs down at Sports World. There was Wendell Ferguson and you guys. And
it would have been after that.
Oh, well, okay. So we played before we kind of officially met. It was so down at Binghamton Sports World in Kitchener. Yeah. So there was some show, and then I got to play a few songs on it. It was one of my first official gigs with a real band, and you were in the band, and then I guess we didn't really get much more than a hi bye, and then
because they used to CKJL used to have this road show in the summer. And
that's right.
It was Wendell's band, and then they would hire me as an extra guy. And the weird thing about that for me, I was hired as the extra guy from the radio station, not from Wendell or in the band.
It wasn't the band hiring you.
No. So the first time I went in was really...
This is fine, but who's paying me?
Yeah, it was very uncomfortable because there was like, what is this guy doing here? Because they were already a put together band already, right? And then the radio station just, I don't know why, I think it was Vic Foley at the time, he wanted me as an extra person for some reason. I don't remember.
I like the fiddle.
Yeah. So the first couple of shows, because I didn't know those guys very well. So it was the first couple of shows I remember, I was younger than them, and some guy coming in to play fiddle. It was
a blue fiddle at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still have that one.
Well, there you go. But it all worked out.
Yeah.
And I recall you had fantastic feathered hair and acid wash jeans.
No. That's hard to forget.
Because I did too.
Yeah. That was the style.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's interesting having kids. My daughter's 12. And so, the 80s fashion stuff is starting to come around again, well, it's in full swing. But man, it's just incredible. She talks about some new fashion thing. I go, oh yeah, your mom used to wear blah, blah, blah in high school, and she's like, no way. And I'm trying to come up with all these 80s sayings, and she's like, shut up. Gag me with a spoon or, all that stuff. She's like, nobody used to say that. I'm like,
yeah, they think they were being original and everything's new. And it's like, no, it's the same crap we used to do.
Same crap, different time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're here at your house, and you basically kind of grew up in this whole area most of your life, right?
Yeah, Menacing. So I was born in Barrie, and we lived in, my folks would have been living in probably, I'm not sure where they lived at the time I was born, but soon after that, we moved out to near Camrose, Alberta. Yeah. Edinburgh, Bashaw area, and had a farm out there. And I was there till about 7 or 8, and then we moved back here.
So what made the move to go out there? That's a big move.
My dad was in the bank, and he also farmed. He came from a farming family, and then he wanted to get out of the bank. I don't know exactly why he wanted to move to the west, and I don't know how they settled on that area. Yeah. But they bought a farm. It was a fixer-upper, it was just a quarter section. It wasn't that big. And then he was in probably about a year into farming, and then he was in the bank doing something, and he heard a familiar voice, and it was a guy he used to work with at the bank in Ontario who got transferred out. Yeah. And he said, hey, Jim, do you want to work in the bank again? I need a guy to do whatever, So he was back in the bank out there. And then I was just talking to them the other day about this. Then, the kids were getting older, and they thought, well, it's probably good to be around the family because they're all back in Ontario. So somebody offered them a bit for the farm, and they did well on that, and they moved back to Ontario, and that was it. So it's always been this area, though, for me. Menacing is where I moved back to, and this is where I am now. So I'm in Menacing, Anton Mills area, and my parents are like a couple of thousand feet from here where I grew up. Yeah. And I bought this farm. I used to dirt bike through here all the time. And on this farm, the house used to be over near the woods. And I always thought it'd be really great. We used to dirt bike to this part of the field and look out at the view. Oh, yeah. I thought, man, this would be so cool. If I ever had the chance, I'd buy this farm and put a house like right here. And it's great because I got to. Yeah. But
so was it for sale, or did you have to pursue it?
No, it came up for sale. There was a sign on it. I actually bought it from a guy I went to school with. So I mean, it's just, but it's amazing how quick times change. Like, I mean, we bought it about 10 years ago, and there's lots of farms for sale in this area. And now you can't buy one. Like it's just that wheel keeps turning, and land's getting more scarce. So I'm really glad we got here when we did. But this is home. You know, we have a place in Nashville that my daughter was born in Canada, but up till age 3, she was living in Nashville. And then we had my son, and we thought, I think we want to raise them in Canada. Yeah, a lot of reasons, nothing in particular, but just a lot of things, near family. Yeah. And so then we started building this.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So when you moved back here, were you probably, 7, 8, 9, you said?
Oh, yeah. From the West, something like that.
And when did you get into actually, was it guitar? Was the instrument you got into first?
Yeah, we had a radio in the kitchen. Out West is where I started getting into it a little bit. We had a radio on the fridge, and it would always play, country music, and that's what my dad was into. I had one sister into Donny Osmond, the other one into Barry Manilow.
Oh, perfect.
I remember my dad, just going, "Oh, that's garbage," or "That's no good," and rah, 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 And he's like, "Johnny Cash, that's real music." And I was like, "Yeah," So, being a little guy, you want to do whatever your dad thinks is cool. So, and it was ingrained in me. I mean, back then you'd go to school, you had cowboy boots and hats on when you went to school. You know, I remember coming to Ontario and thinking, why doesn't anybody have boots and what's the deal?
Yeah,
totally different, right? And it was. Where I lived was, definitely just farms. That's all it was, a small farm school, and it was farm kids, Yeah. And so that was in you, and it was all country music. So my dad had a little Stella guitar. I still have it, and it had a CFCW sticker on it. Yeah. This is pretty cool because we'd go to the rodeo in like Pinoca or any place like that, but CFCW would be the AM station that would give you the country music and the hog and feed report every half hour, Yeah. And so it was pretty neat. And then when I started recording and got to visit radio stations. I remember visiting CFCW, and Larry Donahue, was there for a long time, but not at that time. But he just retired recently. I remember meeting him at CFCW first and saying, "Man, when I was a kid, I had this guitar and this sticker, and it was neat." Oh
yeah.
Going like, wow, I learned on my dad's little guitar and that goofy sticker, and now I get to hear my songs on that radio station. That was a big deal to me.
Yeah, it's funny how when you're young and you experience these things, and then when you get older, you become part of those things.
Yeah,
and it's like almost like deja vu happening to some extent. I get those things every once in a while where you're sitting watching an artist perform or something when you're young, and then later on you end up working with them.
Yeah,
and that's
the weird
those
part.
things are really bizarre.
Yeah,
but neat at the same time. I mean, the same thing as dirt biking through this land, and
then you're sitting on it.
Yeah, you would never think of those things.
No, and so I mean that's part of the magic of the music business sometimes, and it's really been great to myself and my family. We've got to see the world singing. I mean, holy smokes, who gets to do that? And then Canada too. It's like I don't know. You read about these places, and then you get to go there. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah. So when you started playing guitar, were you just basically on your own, or did you have a teacher?
It was just me at first. So my dad had a guitar in the closet and had, six-string guitar, but it only had 3 strings at the top. It had a G, B, and E.
Yeah.
And then
that's all you need.
Well, that's what he said. Because there was all these other things, at that age, you're like, I'm going to be a football player. I'm going to be an astronaut. I'm going to be a whatever, right? So, it's all these things like baseball gloves that, you buy and then they just kind of sit there or whatever, Yeah. And he said, well, if you can learn a song on those 3 strings, I'll buy you a full set of 6. And, so I did. I learned, it's the Tom Jones song, but Barbara Mandrell is who I knew it as. Every pop song or any rock song, if it had a country crossover, I always learned the country thing. I never even knew there were rock songs, right? Yeah. That's how country I was. So Barbara Mandrell, Darling, I'm Feeling Pretty Lonesome.
Yeah.
Call you on the phone soon. But, So I learned that little one. And he got me 6 strings, and then I just sat there forever and just, I didn't have to be told to practice,
Yeah.
It was just something I really wanted to do. And I just loved it. I could sit there for hours and just pluck a string and listen to it or look at a guitar. And I just loved the feel of the neck. And it was just great. I just loved guitar. And that's how I got into it. And then when I got older, I started taking lessons once we moved back to Ontario here.
Yeah. It's funny. Everyone I've talked to that's been successful in music all started, obviously when they're young, but the same thing. It was the instrument basically consumed them, and that's all they wanted to do.
Yeah.
Luckily, back in those days, there wasn't a million things to
distractions.
Yeah, like now, it's certainly harder for someone to stay focused on when you've got, I think people do, obviously.
Yeah. Well, it's
there's
interesting.
advantages because you can go on now online and look and watch all these other people play, and you didn't have those. You just sat and just learned and listened and figured it out.
Yeah, there was the learning curve was long and painful and frustrating at times, but yeah, with YouTube and stuff, like it's so great because even I'm a professional musician, and I'll go, how do they play that lick in that certain song, or what's that chord where you do the, whatever. Yeah. And there's somebody on there going, this is how you do it. And it's that easy. And you're like, wow, that's great. Or even equipment, how do you get this proper thing? Before you'd have to, I was playing clubs, you'd be like, you'd always meet that guy in that other band and be like, hey man, how do you, where do you put your overdrive and, and compressor? Like, how does that work? And it's like, oh, I do this and I learned this from a guy out and blah, blah, blah. And
YouTube. It's hard to say what's better, right? Because there's a part that's so convenient to be able to look something up that you don't know if you're missing that step where that troubleshooting where you learn. It's good, I think, both ways. But when we were younger, we just had to figure it out half the time. And I think there's some really smart life skill learning elements to that, instead of knowing that I can always just go to the internet and look it up.
Yeah, it's so disposable, right? Like you might go, well, how did they do that? You look it up, you learn it, and you forget it.
Yeah.
Like there is that too. But
it's good both ways, really. I mean,
yeah, and I think creating nostalgia of, oh, this guy taught me this, or this is how I learned this. Those things are they're just creating part of your own little movie that are pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like, and I love the fact that my kids as well, like my son, he's into like Panic at the Disco and Imagine Dragons and all this stuff. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, I would never, ever listen to it. Right.
Yeah.
I just wouldn't. I think it's cool. And then after I listen to it several times, we'll be doing something and he'll put that on and it gets into your head and then it can change how you write songs. You get little pop melodies in your head and makes you kind of rediscover music again. Cause I've heard every country song ever, and, I'm in radio, so I get to hear up to the second what's going on. Yeah. So there's nothing new under the sun, right? But then you get into his sphere of music, and it's like a whole new world again. It's like, wow, well, that's cool. I love the fact they're putting this instrument with that, and it's stuff I'd never normally think of.
Yeah. So back into learning the guitar, and when did this singing come about? Was that just kind of came together?
It was kind of one and the same as like all the guys I like listening to, they just happen to sing too, right? Yeah. I mean, and I remember my parents had a floor model RCA record player. Had the radio on one side, the record player on the other side, and the records in the middle. It was so cool. And I remember listening to records for hours and hours, and I would lay under kind of near the bottom of it because that's where the bass was. It's so cool. It sounded great. And I'd turn it on so loud that the bass speakers would, fuzz out. They were really weak, but it was cool. And I'd flip the records over, and I was so enamored by the behind the scenes guys. So I wanted to know, like, who are these guys that played on the records and who wrote their own songs too, right? That was a big thing for me. I don't know why, but I wanted to know which songs Johnny Cash wrote and which ones he didn't. I'm like, who's Shel Silverstein, And then you'd look over in this one, oh, he wrote one over here too. And so what does a songwriter do, or who's this guy, Fuzzy Owens, who worked with Merle? And you're like, what, well, how come, okay, he worked with, Capitol Records. What does this mean, and who's a producer, So that stuff to me was pretty cool. It was just as interesting as who Merle Haggard was.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I was very much like that, where there was a time where I'd be listening to a song and it'd be a year or two before I knew what the song was about.
Right.
Because I really wasn't listening to the lyrics. I liked the melody and I was listening to it a little bit. You knew the lines in the chorus a bit.
Yep.
But then every once in a while you said, oh, I should really listen to this whole song all the way through. And it's like, I didn't know the song was about this.
Yeah.
Because you were too busy listening to the guitar part or the drums or the mix. And and the harmonies, and that really was the last thing I got to was the actual lyrics.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, and everybody comes to it different ways, right? So I remember listening to, the first time I ever sang in public, and I've told this story a lot on stage too, was that I wanted to sing at the Minnesing Mini Fest here. I was just, 10 or something like that. And so I wanted to sing a George Jones song. And I wanted to sing Wild and Blue by John Anderson.
Oh, yeah.
Because I bought that record, Wild and Blue, and it had swinging and all that on it.
Yeah.
So I was going to sing Wild and Blue because I thought it was so cool. And my parents were like, oh, I don't know, you're 10, and that song kind of speaks about stuff maybe you shouldn't be singing. And I was like, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, but whatever. Yeah. So I just thought it was a cool song. And then I thought, all right, fine, I'll sing a different one. I'll sing George Jones, If Drinking Don't Kill Me, Her Memory Will. So that was the first song I sang. And this is cool. I'll jump way, way ahead here. So we bought a house in Nashville lots of years later, moved there. And the house backs onto the Woodlawn Cemetery. It's on Thompson.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget, I was, as a kid, I was just in love with George Jones. I had cassettes of his I'd go to sleep by, and I listened to them so much that it would stretch the tape. So certain songs, like I couldn't play acoustic along with them anymore because they were out of key. They were so stretched, right? So fast forward years and years and years, and I'm in Nashville. I'm working in the backyard, and behind me is a bunch of bushes and then a cemetery. And they were having George Jones visitation downtown or at the Ryman or wherever it was at the time. And I heard digging in the graveyard behind me. And I was thinking, like, wouldn't that be really odd if it was George Jones' grave they were digging,
Yeah.
So I walked back there and I'm like, it was. It was his grave. So they're digging. I mean, I couldn't believe, like, it really was a strange, awkward milestone, right?
Yeah.
I'd only met George Jones once. And I've been to several of his concerts as a kid and even as an adult. But it was so surreal to go, okay, I used to listen to these cassettes. I used to want to sing like him, all this stuff. And been to the George Jones Museum when I went to Nashville when I was 14, Yeah. And here they are digging his grave. So it was kind of an interesting milestone.
Yeah, I met George. I did a show with Tommy Hunter. It was in Niagara Falls, the big show they have there every year. Mm-hmm. And I forget who was. I'm not sure if it was just us and George or there was someone on before us. But I was mixing Tommy Hunter's show. Mm-hmm. So it's a typical, American situation where they came in. It was in the round. It's just kind of a setup all weekend, things coming in. And they basically wanted everything changed. Now we're using all of our own gear.
Sure.
So everything had to come down, everything got moved, all their own stuff. Finally, the time they got done the sound check, people were starting to come in already.
Right.
So we got everything patched on stage, and it was in the round too, which made it even stranger. Mm-hmm. So I remember literally running back to the console as they were announcing Tommy to come on the show, and I hadn't been to the front of house desk yet at all.
Oh boy!
So, and I'm trying to remember, it was a big PM3000. Back in the day when the consoles are big as this. Yeah. And so I just grabbed faders, moved them all up, and we started. So I was head down into trying to dial in a mix for the first song, and I remember the first song going, and I hear someone yelling. And I was like, what the heck is that? And I finally look up, and the monitor tech for George had come from the stage up towards me, and he's yelling at me. I was like, what do you need? He says, pick up the comm. And it's like he was trying to contact me through the headphones. He wanted to talk to me about something. But I didn't see the light going off or anything.
And you're mixing a show.
Busy. So he goes back, and I pick it up. I said, what's the problem? He says, I want to let you know at the end of the show, the MC is going to be coming out, and it's going to be on channel 32.
And that's it?
And that was it. And I'm thinking,
nice.
You walked all the way back and yelled through the audience at me just to tell me that. I was like, all right, whatever. That's all fine.
Uh-huh.
And so we did our normal show. It was an hour. That's where we contracted for an hour. Well, George wanted to go on at a particular time.
Yeah.
You know, he was there, and it said he was supposed to go on at 3. Now it's like, I don't know, whatever, 20 after 3 or something. It's an afternoon show. And all I remember at the time meeting George, we're in the dressing room, and George is walking really angrily through the dressing room area of the arena, and he was like, "Welcome to the Tommy Hunter show." And just like walked through all mad. And he went up and did like, I don't know, 4 numbers and left.
That was it.
That was it.
After setting up all his own stuff.
Yeah. And it was just because everyone was working under what they're supposed to contract wise. But in his mind, someone had told him, you know, they're on at 3, but now it's 20 after 3.
Right.
Or something ridiculous like that. Anyways.
Oh my gosh.
It was a mess. But
American headliner.
I still remember that guy yelling at me from, you know, and there was a place that was packed.
Pick up the gun. Yeah, I just want to let you know that George likes red M&Ms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyways, that's the George
I'm wearing
story.
one sock. Okay, well, thanks for filling me in. Appreciate it.
Anyways, to go back to so when you did the talent contest, you went in that. So you didn't really have. Did you have a band or a bunch of friends that you'd get together play with, or you just kind of on
When
your
I
own?
was like 16 or whatever.
were you on
that?
your own before that contest, or
No, I didn't have. No, I didn't. Actually, I didn't have any friends in the country community because when I was going to school, there was no country fans. You know, now you go to schools and it's like schools are full of kids who like country, and it's cool. It's awesome. When I was a kid, I was.
or they just didn't tell you they like country.
Well,
That's what it was like when I
that
was in
too.
high school,
Yeah, they wouldn't back you up. You'd be at school. Yeah, country's awesome.
Yeah.
Crickets. Yeah. But I went to school in the heavy metal and the new wave era, right? So when that was going on, that big fight, and I liked it all, right? Like I liked Duran Duran, and I don't know,
Wham.
yeah, totally. But no, I mean, I liked, and it was weird because I was a kid. I was listening to the production. I was like, I remember when Faith came out by George Michael, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, Wham, love him, hate him, whatever. But I was like, that guitar sounds really great, and people are like, that song sucks. And I'm like, yeah, but the guitar sounds really great. And I just thought there were so many cool things, and like that, like the lead guitar and all that stuff. But even on the keyboard stuff, I was listening to that. And then I had friends who were really into shredding, and I was in a heavy metal band for a spell.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Defenders of Creation. It sucked. Anyway, but I had a BC Rich guitar. It was a powder blue, like a bat wing kind of thing. It was just like the stupidest thing ever. It sucked. It was like, they make great guitars. Like some of them are really good, but this one was just like it was awful. Anyway.
But the checks.
But yeah, the girls I kept away were amazing. But I mean, there were so many great things, but I'd always, these guys would be into shredding and playing really fast. Yeah. So I remember bringing Ricky Skaggs Live in London to school on a cassette, and I played them Country Boy.
Yeah.
And, with shredding, you do that finger tapping thing, which it sounds really fast, but it's not. Yeah. Eddie Van Halen, it's really great. And it's really hard to do, but it's not, you're not playing every little note really fast usually. So then I played them Country Boy, and he's playing this on acoustic and stuff. And they're like, so is he's picking every single note? Like, is that what he's doing? I'm like, yeah, like they're really doing that, it's live. And so they were I remember them being blown away at that. I was like, holy smokes, that's really awesome, right? But, country fans, it was just kind of me, and then we went into this contest in Barrie, and I was 15, 16, something like that. And I got a chance to record at a studio nearby. A fella named Greg Beacock built it and owned it, and got my first taste of real recording, and that was pretty amazing. It was, it's just guitar vocal kind of stuff. It wasn't too much to speak of, but it was the first time.
Did you feel, I know the first time I was in the studio, it was hooked, like instantly, this is where I want to be. I mean, it was fascinating. And it's a neat experience, but there was something about being in the studio that I could see that would really.
Yeah, I didn't get hooked on the magic of it until my second, Then I got the chance to go to Nashville with a guy named Ray Griff, who's written huge songs. He's from Canada. Oh my gosh, I'm tired. He's from Canada, but he's Canadian, and he's passed away since. But he's written all these huge, country songs I grew up listening to, right? Yeah. So I got to do a record with him when I was 16 off that. And then I didn't go back to Nashville for a few years, and I got to work with Scott Baggett, who I still work with today. But I'll never forget, because he was like he's such an enigma, because he grew up listening to, T-Rex and Deep Purple and, knows every Beatles thing. He was a rocker, right? And he loved rock and roll, and he still is a rock guy. So the thing was, though, he was from Atlanta, and then he moved to Nashville. He got a job playing bass for Leroy Van Dyke. Oh, yeah. So here's this guy who just just always cussing about Nashville and these old Opry guys, blah, 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 blah. But he knows everything about it because he grew up as a musician. When he was a teenager, he got these jobs playing for Leroy Van Dyke and Jim Head Brown, and he's played with all of them, right? Yeah. And it was that was the first time I was in the studio, really in the studio, working with a guy. Yeah. And I'll never forget the sounds of like a real B3. Like he'd had a real B3 there, and you'd have headphones on, and you can hear the real stereo of it, and just that real thing, the smell of a B3 running. And I'll never forget, hearing, we used a Mellotron, a real Mellotron. And I was like, oh my gosh, these sounds are just like, it's like a storybook come to life. I couldn't believe it. And 2-inch, it was all tape at the time, and there was something mysterious about that. And the sounds of that machine, the clunk and the cutting the tape and all that stuff. And so it was very tactile. You're doing something, right? Yeah. And so that was the first time I was totally in. The rest were like, this is interesting. I don't really know what's going on. Yeah. I'm kind of scared, but I think I like it. It's like kissing a girl for the first time. Yeah. I don't know if I should be here, but I think I like this. Yeah.
Good analogy. So when you went, your first album with Ray, what was that experience going down to Nashville like?
It was different. Ray was, he was quite the guy. He was kind of like man about town in Nashville on a lot of degrees because he'd written all these hit songs. He was from the old school, right? Yeah. So everybody knew him. But I had written 10 songs I was going to do on this record. He had somebody pre-program all the drums. Oh, yeah. So there was even back then. Yep. There was no live drums on it. It was the Fairlight system, Yeah. And it was all done. And I remember they had a guy who was the drum programmer was there on site. He was basically had this old Mac type computer, Yeah. It looked like, it just looked like something out of Moscow now, like big buttons on it and stuff. Really weird. Yeah. And then we had all the musicians kind of sitting around in a semicircle, and we just played to the, got the key, and we blew through it in like 2 days. It was really quick. And, what you sang is what you got. And it was just a really quick record. It was a custom thing and all that. But it was a good
start.
Yeah. And actually, and then after Ray, I should say this, after Ray before Scott, I went to work at Orchard Studio with Wendell and them. Oh, yeah. And I did, I think, 3 or 4 songs there. And that was probably the start of me getting hooked. Yeah. And I think Dave Ferry was the owner-engineer. Yeah. So it was kind of neat because I'm like, this guy, like, he lives right here and he's got a studio. Like, does this happen in Ontario? I had no idea. Yeah. It was so cool. And it was like a real studio. It looked like a real studio. And so I got to do that, and that was neat. And then I got to work with Scott. So
did anything come from the first album you did?
No. Not that we ever need to bring up ever. Actually, the odd time I'll still get people go, my mom has your first cassette or what? Oh my gosh. No, yeah, give it to me. I'll burn. But my favorite thing I get now is, you do a show, you're out with the Hammers all the time and still, busy, and you'll get some young girl come up to you, and she'll go, "Are you Jason McCoy?" And I go, "Oh, yeah." She goes, "My grandma loves your music." It's just funny. My mom loves your records. Yeah, forget it.
I know at home at our theater, every once in a while, someone will bring in a Walters Family record from 1978 or something like that, and they'll bring it to you. And they'll show it to you like you've never seen it before.
Yeah. Bet you've never seen one of these. I have 500 of them in the attic.
Look what we found. Oh, great. Where'd you get that? I got it at a yard sale for 50 cents. It's like, and then you feel even worse.
And actually, they said, just take it.
Yeah.
Isn't that great?
They don't even ask for it signed or anything. They just want to show you, like like I said, like you've never seen it. That's like, oh, that's great. Yeah, let's.
I have 45s of mine. The first thing I pressed was 45s.
Yeah.
What was I thinking? Anyway.
So what was the
Wow.
going back, was the album with Scott, was that the first album that kind of moved the needle at all?
It was what I did was, I think we did 4 songs, and that was I can't remember all the titles, but This Used to Be Our Town.
Yeah.
Take It From Me, 2 others I don't think got really. So what happened was I released those. I hooked up with a lawyer who was connected with MCA at the time.
Yeah.
And that was put out through MCA as a deal. Like, if these do okay, we'll send them a radio, see how they do.
Yeah.
And if they start doing okay, then we'll talk about maybe doing something. So This Used to Be Our Town went to 22, I think. Or one of them went to 22 or something like that. I remember the number 22.
Yeah.
And then when it started to go a little higher, then they started to say, oh, let's do something. So I finished a record. I remember, I guess Scott and I finished that record. And then we got funding to do the Playing for Keeps record that had Dixieland and all that on it.
Yeah.
So I'm getting my wires crossed a little bit, but that's kind of what happened. So, and Ed Harris was the guy who put that together.
Oh, yeah. Remember it.
Yep.
So what was that like, getting airplay for the first time?
It was pretty cool. I was working at Horseshoe Valley Resort just over here.
Yeah.
As a bellman.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody said, oh, you're a bellboy. No, I'm a bellman. It's the same goofy hat, but we're tougher. And I'd known all the maids there. You're always, in and out of the rooms all day, gathering trays and, whatever you're doing. So you kind of all know each other. And they all knew I was a singer, and I played in little events around here and stuff, right? So they'd always have the TVs on, or they'd have the TV with the radio on.
Yeah.
For some reason, they were able to get kicks. It was 104, I think, at the time. And they'd be able to get the local radio. Oh, no, it was CKGL. No, that wasn't. It was
Kitchener. Yeah.
That's Kitchener. Whatever. It was just the call signs. It wasn't even kicks yet.
Yeah.
But I remember they started playing the record, and the first time I heard it was in one of the rooms, and I came in and told the so-and-so maid, I was like, that's my new song, blah, blah, blah. She's like, you're crazy, get back to work. So I was like, nobody believed me, right? And like, whatever. And it's not like, you get your song played on the radio and then they give you a jet, it's a little lag time there. But that was pretty cool. So I remember the first time hearing the song on the radio. It was really neat.
Yeah, it was in a hotel room.
Yeah, it was working.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever, kid. Now pick up that tray and get back to the kitchen.
Isn't that funny? You hear it. Hey, that's me. No, it isn't.
I made it. Grow up. Yeah.
So did you, you were with MCA for that deal.
Yep.
And then the album with Dixieland, and
that was the one right after. Yeah.
Yeah. So looking back, I always look back at, you look at certain people's careers and you can go back. There's that one song that kind of, even though it may not have been a number one or whatever, but that one first song that kind of defines you as an artist.
Yeah.
Would that
Dixieland's the one?
Yeah.
Because we, so I wrote, let's see, how'd this go? I wrote it with Nisha Sheridan, who went on to write Young for Kenny Chesney and had a number one with that. So Nisha wrote Jerk for Kim Stockwood.
Oh, yeah.
I forget what we were doing, but he goes, we needed some rhyme for another song, something like, work. And he goes, I know every rhyme to anything irk, because I rewrote Jerk. He's like, I know all the rhymes. Anyway, great guy, and loved writing with him. And so we wrote this little Dixieland thing. And then I'll never forget, I've told this story on stage a lot too, and it's true. I was sitting around at a conference table in Nashville, and we had a budget to record like 5 songs the next day. We're going to finish this record.
Yeah.
And so they all wanted input into what we were going to record. And of course, they didn't have FaceTime and all that kind of stuff those days. So you put on a conference call phone, and then you sit around, and I'd play them a couple of songs on acoustic, and they'd be like, I don't know about that one. That's not bad. And then I played them Dixieland. I played a verse and chorus because that's all we had written.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, that one. Do that one. And they said, it's done, right? And I was like, oh, yeah. Geez, sure, it's done. Yep. Of course, it wasn't. I had no second verse, no bridge, nothing. I didn't even really know what key I'd do it in. So we recorded it, and I just hummed through the verse, and then I had kind of an idea what the bridge would sound like, Yeah. And then it was like done on a Thursday, and like Wednesday we were going to be mixing it, the next, it was so quick. And I called my friend Denny Carr, and I was like, we'd written lots of songs together, and it's like, man, I don't know what to do. I don't want to piss off Nisha, and, can't finish the song, and I don't want to put pressure on him. And I'm like, and I'm freaking out. So I got all three of us in a room. We just finished it pretty quick. I mean, it's not Bridge Over Troubled Waters. It wasn't that deep, but I was just under the gun. I had all these other songs to sing, and I was just freaking out. So, and we did it, and it was huge. So the thing about that is we released it, and then we got nominated for CCMA for SOCAN Song of the Year, I think it was. And it was up against Shania Twain, one of her big first tunes, I was like, wow, there goes that, And it was funny because Nisha, his wife Jen, and my wife Doreen, we were in Ottawa at the time. And we were sitting there in the audience, and I didn't realize, like, if you're like one of two people in the category they think are going to win, they get tipped a little bit because they got a camera on you. Yeah. So I hate to bust award show bubbles, but I'm sure people know that by now. So maybe they have 5 cameras on all the nominees, whatever. So they had a camera right on us. And as soon as they read our name, Nisha and I both looked over and we were like, holy. And then we said something. And it was like, you could read our lips totally, right? But it was on national TV. It was like, you idiots. So anyway, and we won the award for that. So it was pretty amazing. I was like, holy smokes. Like, we beat Shania. Are you kidding me? Like, holy smokes. That was weird. So it was, that was the first one. I was like, okay, this is getting real. This could happen, and I've never really had anything that eclipsed it as a solo artist. I had other hits, but I mean, that was the first one that was just like, wow, bam. And it was a gold record. So it was a pretty cool, awesome thing to have happen.
It's neat when you go back and look at those type of songs, anyone's career. We were mentioning John Anderson earlier, like Swinging and stuff. There'd be songs around it that maybe went higher in the chart or whatever there was, but there was always that one song that kind of did. He had a huge career outside of Swinging, right? But it's like, that's the one. Like, that's just what you remember. And those are, I hated it at first. Like, for a while, I really hated it. It was like, I was like, I don't even want to do that. I want to do more country stuff because it's more pop, right? It's just never really what I really wanted to do. And then I did the Honky Tonk Sonatas. It was all like really country stuff. I was like, I love this. But then it's always like weird putting a set together. You're like, how do I do all this country stuff? And then where do I put Dixieland? It's just weird, Yeah. But then after a while, you're like, that doesn't matter. Like, I mean, I'm sure Jimmy Buffett, doesn't have to do Margaritaville anymore. But I bet you now he enjoys it more than he ever did because it's part of like, wow, that's one little notch on your belt they'll never take away. And it's like I had a good little time with that. It was great. Yeah, you take probably all your songs that you've done and all the singles you've had, and in the show, there's probably a lot of them you could probably leave out if you wanted to. Yeah. But I think Dixieland, it would be pretty hard to leave that out of a show for you.
Yeah, and I don't do a lot of solo shows anymore. It's mainly Roadhammers, but I mean, I've got a couple doing this summer and a couple I did. I do several things, and then I'm always doing different events and things that I'm at, and I'll do a couple of songs, and that's what I do. But I enjoy it because it's and it's also, what's really weird about that song is that, like, I mean, I'm 48, so people my age will remember that, and a few a little younger. But I mean, I'll do it, and there'll be 16-year-old kids singing it. Yeah. Like, how do you know that's an old song? It was in '98. So how does that happen? Yeah. So it's just good that it's still, some people still hear it. It's pretty neat.
It's one thing I wanted to mention. It's neat about your career is that you can entertain a bunch of teenagers as Jason McCoy or the Roadhammers, but you could go to the extreme. You could go into a local retirement home and charm the pants off a bunch of elderly ladies in there.
Is that really a goal? Do you really want to charm the pants off them?
Well, Kick the shoes off, maybe.
There we go. That's enough.
There's a visual there. All of a sudden, I just went to. But that's neat about. There's not a lot of artists that could swing that far, right? It's pretty neat. I mean, I've always known you as a great singer, but you're also a really great entertainer, and I think that really sustained your career a long time.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of artists nowadays, or there's been even when you started, they're the ones that weren't able to entertain. Tend to kind of not last as long.
Yeah, well, I've also I've never been an artist that like got signed to a record label and they did all these records with you. I did like one record with MCA, and the deals I did were always we pay for the record and license it and stuff like that. It's kind of mechanical stuff of the business people don't maybe care about, but I've never been that kind of artist. I don't know why, but I've always been the guy who kind of builds it and kind of, if nobody else is gonna do it, then I'll just kind of do it, you know? And sometimes that doesn't always make for great politics, but it always, it's always worked out for the most part. But the thing about that is that's the same thing with the entertaining. Like I started out and I wanted to be like Dwight Yoakam, like, so cool and, brooding and all this kind of stuff. Right. And then I used to think show had to be so perfect and what shirt you wore had to be all this stuff. And then the monitor would squeal and I'd be Mr. Cool. And then I'd get off the stage and I'd be really mad, this sucks and that show sucked and everything sucks and the world's going to end. And then a couple of times started doing theaters, which is a totally different animal. Instead of just doing clubs, you're actually talking to people. And a couple of things would go wrong and I'd make fun of it because naturally I'd just be kind of goofy and funny off stage, right?
Yeah.
And then I'd make fun of it on stage and everybody'd laugh and I'd be like, oh, that was fun. Like, it was like I kind of broke this mold of, there used to be this compartmentalization of like I'd be me off stage, but then me on stage was a different guy.
Yeah.
And it was so flippin' painful because, I mean, I wasn't having any fun at all. None. No fun on stage at all. And then all of a sudden when I just started being myself, it was like, oh, I enjoy this, and other people are liking it too. So I'm just being myself. And that saved my career. That completely saved my career because then I started getting asked to host things and do stuff. And now it's radio and these kind of things. But it also saved me personally from self-destruction because I couldn't have just been, I can't shut up. So I can't just be this guy. I always wanted to be those cool artists that got on stage and didn't say much and just kind of sang your song and be cool. And it's like, I can't shut up.
I was with you through a lot of those times where you, I remember lots of times you come off stage and we just have a great show. Yeah. And then you were just really bummed out about something.
Everything sucks.
Thinking, why is Jason bummed out about the show? It's really great.
Because I wasn't just like Dwight Yoakam or whatever,
But I think that's, whatever way you want to look at that, it was you wanting to be as good as you possibly could be, right? That was you working hard to want to make sure that the audience had, a show that was 110%.
Yeah, it's half that and half just pure diva BS. I mean, it all comes down to there's a bit of that too, and immaturity too. Like, I mean, I'm a really slow maturer. Let me put it that way. But I always refer to my wife as my grown up. But I don't, I can't believe I go to shows now and I don't really get bent out of shape about anything. Like, I mean, the monitor can be just awful and it'd just be a fine show. It's like, and I see other bands, it's like, and I used to do this. It'd be like, okay, can I get the keyboard up 10% and can we get the bass down 20% and pan it like a little bit to the right? And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Just turn it all up and do your thing, man. Like, and I came up in an era where the first band I played with around the local area was called 3/4 Country. And we didn't have monitors. I didn't even know what they were for. I saw those other bands had wedges in the floor and I'm like, I have no idea what that is. But, and you just be singing at a Legion and you kind of hear your voice bouncing off the back wall and it's fine. And in reality, going through all that stuff and touring and crappy systems and stuff, it makes you bulletproof. Because, I mean, and you say entertaining a high school to an old folks home, all those awkward situations I was ever in, and I didn't know this at the time, but all the awkward things that made me mad, you'd go, oh, that was so awkward and I look like such an idiot and all that. I should have taken it in a stride along the way because all it was doing was just giving me the chops to have some content to fall back on.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It's just, you get your little shtick together, you find out who you are, and you roll with it. So I'm that guy. Whatever that thing is, that's what I do now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a part of getting older, right? You just become, you change at one point where you don't care as much about certain things and more, it becomes more about
fashion, obviously.
Yeah.
For me.
let's just have fun instead of, and not worry as much. And it's just becoming confident in yourself to a certain extent too. I think, that happens when you're young. I mean, I think we all went through it, or you just kind of, you really you worry more about impressing everybody else around you instead of just having a good time. And that's, a lot of that's just confidence.
Well, every show is the one that's going to make you, it's like, no, it's not. And it's also the other one is, every mistake's what's going to break you. It's like, no, it's not. Yeah. It's like,
but still, again, I think there's a portion of that. I know when I was working with you a lot, you really did spend a lot of time putting a show together. There wasn't a lot of, let's just go up and here's a set list and everyone's winging it. There was a lot of planning. Let's do this at, during this song, or let's all move up here, or let's all, and no one else was doing that.
And a lot of that was shooting in the dark, but other stuff was, and a lot of that came from rock and roll world too. Like I never listened to any rock till I was about 18 or something like that. But then when you started to see these shows and rock shows and stuff, like they way more dynamic than a country show. Yeah. And I used to hate it. You'd go to even big country shows. It was kind of a snore fest, like they didn't do much, but the songs were great and the artist was really charismatic, and that was the show, right?
Yeah.
But I always felt like there was more to do, right? And that's why working the Roadhammers, it's fun because we're all kind of like-minded in that. We wanted to make a show as opposed to just, 4 guys going up and just standing there.
Yeah. And I think probably all those years of doing Jason McCoy led to that, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Everything helps you go to the next thing.
And really back in the strong McCoy days when you were touring a lot with that, there wasn't a lot of that extra production. There wasn't video walls. There wasn't all these extra things that people rely on to make a great show. You had to, you're going to a festival, you're going to Craven, and then right after you is, who knows, Dwight Yoakam or Diamond Rio or something like that. And those guys were playing every week, constantly.
Yeah.
And there was always a big difference. You probably found, the Canadian acts would come on and do their thing, and then the Americans would come on, and it's like, holy crap. Man.
Well, they'd be on a bus, so they'd be rested and showered.
Yeah.
They'd do 300 shows in a year, and you'd do 12,
and they had advantage, of all the time. And
it took you 3 days to get to the gig in a van, and they're, flying in or hopping on a bus, and it's like, holy smokes. They got their own gear, and, it's just, it's really hard.
But I think you acknowledged that, and you really wanted to make sure that you stood up to those acts. I think, and that was kudos. I think you really worked hard at that.
We tried, and then it's. I remember lots of times, seeing U.S. acts come in, and I always thought it would be really great to get to the point where you had your own crew and your own gear and all that kind of stuff. But then I've also seen U.S. acts fly in and just use, backline gear and last minute show up and just plug and play and just nail it. And that's, and that only came from confidence, right? And the confidence, and they obviously played a lot at the time too. So at times, I had to remind myself it was just what it is.
I think we were playing Merit or something. I remember playing with you, and Little Texas was on.
Oh, right. And they had all their gear lost or something?
Well, no, I think they had a Yamaha deal or something like that.
Oh, that's right. And
they walked on stage, and there's all these cardboard boxes of guitars.
That was right, yeah.
And they just ripped them open.
And none were set up.
No, brand new guitars and bass and everything. They just grabbed the instruments, plugged them in, and they did their set, and they just dropped them and left.
And it was great.
It was fantastic. I still remember that. That's the bizarrest thing I've ever seen.
I think that's a great way to travel.
I know.
I tell you personally. I mean, if we could make sure they were set up, that'd be great. But just disposable guitars.
What type of deal is that? That's awesome.
I don't know, man. I do remember that.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, it was all the cardboard box, the shipping boxes. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's funny. So going back to going through, all your albums with Jason McCoy, and finally got to a point where the Roadhammers idea popped in.
Yeah.
And what started that? What was the idea behind the first initial thought on that?
I'd just come off of Sins, Lies, and Angels, and I didn't really have an idea what to do solo because I think the music landscape was changing at the time. I can't remember exactly what. It was coming out of the Mavericks kind of vibe, you know, and it was getting more into, I think the Mavericks were kind of winding up that cool thing, that Foster and Lloyd, that vibe stuff. And I can't remember what era it was. I guess it was getting into more of the Bubba stuff, the Joe Diffie, and I kind of wasn't quite that. I kind of wasn't quite the camo kind of, tobacco chewing guy, and I wasn't quite the rock pop stuff, so I didn't really have a home. And then I thought I always wanted to do like I guess they call it a concept record, and I just wanted to do a bunch of old trucking classics because I was going through my vinyl collection, kind of figuring out what do I want to do. And I had this LP called Diesel Smoke Dangerous Curves, and it was all the best of the trucking greats, Mm-hmm. And then I was talking to Ted Ellis at CMT at the time, and reality shows were just a brand new thing, right? Like it was 05, I guess, 04, 05. Yeah. And I said, I want to do this record, and I thought it'd be cool just to kind of put together a Wilburys kind of bunch of guests, or I don't know. And he goes, it'd be great if we could, film you doing that. It'd be neat to film that. And I thought, well, let's audition people and do like a little band or something, right? And then, and the name, the Roadhammers, actually, Jason Barry came up with the idea for the name.
Oh, did he?
I think it was him, or so there was Brian Tulk, myself, a bunch of others, and we were down. This is a few years before, but I was hired to do a thing for Anheuser-Busch in Bermuda, of all places. Yeah. My wife got to go with us, and it was 40 minutes on the beach. We played there on like a Friday night, but they flew us in the Monday before, and we got to stay on the Monday after. Yeah. It was amazing. So then, were you on that? No,
I wasn't. No.
And we rented all these little scooters around the island. So all week long, we had these scooters, and we were this little gang. And somebody kept saying like, all right, we're the Roadhammers. We got to ride, Yeah. I was like, that's the coolest name ever, the Roadhammers. Who comes up with that? Yeah. So I always put it in the back of my brain, like if I ever did a band, I should get called the Roadhammers or something. So I can't remember exactly who came up with it, but I remember Jason saying that like as well. And so we were all saying it. And then, when we were doing this record, I thought, well, we'll call the band the Roadhammers, So, and then Chris was playing in my band at the time, so I didn't really have to audition a bass player. Yeah. Scott Christensen was the drummer, and he was going to be the first drummer of the Roadhammers, but he was getting into working on these show productions, being a producer of shows, and he was kind of busy and doing all these other things. So he couldn't really commit, but he was in the first photos, actually. I got some of those. They're pretty funny. And then Clay, I knew about him because he had his band. He was playing different things. We played Stampede together that year, I think, and he was playing one stage. I went over and checked it out. And so I was like, who's the most rock and roll guy? So him, right? So the first time I went to see him, I went to show my wife. I had a bus at the time, and we were cruising down 17th on Calgary, in Calgary at Stampede, and he was playing a bar. So I said, Clay's playing. Let's just dip in real quick, and I'll show you who this guy is that I think we should be in the Hammers. So so we go in, and there's Clay with no shirt on, and he's got a microphone with like a 30-foot cable, and he's crawling along the table, knocking these glasses off the table, and he's doing something by like Iggy Pop or something really wacky, and Trina's like, nope. I was like, yeah, but nope. He's going to cost you a lot of money in lawsuits, and it's not going to. He's going to hurt somebody. Anyway, so then he. We had him audition on camera. We had a lot of guys audition, but he was kind of earmarked, I thought, as the guy. So it worked out really great. We went in and did the record with Scott Baggett, and the rest is history. But and I'm a Roadhammer, actually. That was on purpose because I was sitting with Denny Carr, who I wrote Dixieland with, and I was saying, okay, we're going to do this thing, and I think it'd be really neat if we were like the rappers, because and the rappers of the day were doing this thing where everybody say their name, right? Yeah. I'm whoever, I'm 50 Cent, or I'm whatever, and it's like, that's their calling card. That's their advertisement. Right. And so I was like, let's write a song about the lifestyle. What's a Roadhammer? Let's define it. So it's like, that's it. So we released that. That was the first single, and it worked with the TV show, and boom, it was, the record debuted at #1, and you know, it was just it wasn't quite real because of the TV inclusion, right? It wasn't. It was bigger than any of us could have ever planned, and then it just snowballed.
It was a challenge, though, wasn't it? I remember.
Oh yeah.
I remember watching you had the first few episodes on your computer. We were touring somewhere. I think it was even in East Coast or something. I remember you pop them open and showing it, and you know, listen to your stories and going to Nashville, and you really, really pounded the pavement for that.
Huge. Like I wanted to get all these endorsement guys involved because I wanted all the people in the lifestyle of trucking to get involved. So Western Star, I remember I had no idea what I was doing with any of these companies. So I just called up Western Star because I knew they were a Canadian truck company. And I was like, you guys, you know, your trucks are awesome and we want to be the voice of your brand and all that stuff, right? So I got hooked up with this guy in Michigan, and he was like he was like head of the paint department or something. Like he wasn't even really the marketing guy. And then he got me hooked up with a marketing guy, and they got involved a little bit. And we started doing some of their corporate events, and then we did the Mid America Truck Show in Louisville for their booth and all that kind of stuff. And it was a really neat experiment in trying those things because I always loved marketing. I just always gravitated toward. There was no such thing as just writing a song and hoping it did well with me. It was like, I'm going to write a song about blah, 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 and we're going to get a clothing company involved, and I want to get a blah, blah. You know, I had to come up with all these ideas around it. Yeah. And I don't know why. I just like it. So that was a really great thing to do that with around the band because it was so... It's a fairly limiting thing to write for the Hammer stuff, but it's also a very liberating thing because it's like you don't sit down in a writing session and waste time going, well, I think I want to write this love song about this girl who moves out west, and you know, or there's some I gotta write a song about the sky being blue. Like it's nothing like it's like this is what we do. Yeah. So does that fit or not? And you just write it, and it's fun. So it's freeing in that way, in that you know where the goalposts are. So there's no messing around.
And you really had to open yourself up. You know, even with the TV show, you really let a lot of people in to the behind the scenes stuff and your personal stuff. And it was for anybody in the music industry, especially in Canada, no one had a show like that. I mean, that was showing a side of things that no one's ever really seen before. Now
it was neat.
Yeah. You were working hard to get an American deal with that too, were you?
Yeah, we did. We got signed on to Montage, which was headed by Alan Butler, who used to head was it Arista? But and Sony, he'd come through that whole camp. But I mean, he drove some pretty darn big projects, you know. Yeah. And so that was neat. It was great in that we got the US deal. After a bunch of showcases and stuff, we had a couple of offers, but you know, Scott Borchetta with Big Machine was one of them, but that didn't, I'm not sure what happened there, but it didn't go full deal, obviously. But he was a big supporter in the beginning. And then Alan Butler came to the table, and people have to remember it was just as social media was getting its legs. So it was still MySpace, right? Yeah. And there were a few bands that were like the Tractors and stuff like that, which were they had a radio hit, but they were still doing like kind of just cool festivals, and they weren't like straight front door radio, right? Yeah. And we knew right off the bat that in Canada we were one thing, but we knew, no question, all four of us, and Corbett was a drummer at the time, Chris and Clay and I, we knew without a doubt, okay, we're not going up against Keith Urban here. Like we had no intention of doing that. Yeah. And the label's like, yeah, we're going to be a different label, and we're going to, you know, we want to do all these different things, and it's not about radio. We're going to go after radio, but you know, that's not the focus. It's about making you guys a cool brand. And we're like, great, like-minded, let's do this. So signed on the dotted line. The second we did, it was like, okay, we have to start working on our radio single, and you know, we really got to make radio happen. Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute, we don't. That's not our. It's not gonna. And then it was just a year and a bit of just, you kind of know it's over as you're starting, and then you're giving it the college try, and it's like, this is not where we want to be. Because all we did for like a year, no word of a lie, was even longer actually, was you'd fly into like a town in the morning, You do a lunchtime performance in a boardroom for one of the big radio stations like Cumulus, I guess it was, or whatever, one of the big networks. And then, they'd be like, hey, you guys are great. That was awesome. Are you going to play us? No, of course not. But hey, thanks for coming. And then you do like an evening dinner with a bunch of guys, and they drop a boatload on the programmers. And then you'd go do a show you drive 3 hours and you're an hour and a half, and you go and play their thing that night. And then you'd wake up the next morning and you go into the morning show at the station across the town, and at like 4 or 5 or 6 in the morning, then you'd hop on a plane around noon, you'd go do an afternoon thing, and you're doing 3 things a day for radio, and you honestly don't know which way's up. Yeah. Like you're living on Starbucks and crappy food, and there's no sleep, and you're in a van and you're on a plane, and you're just punch drunk, and you're doing that 6 days a week.
And the same questions over and over again.
And it got to be muscle memory. I mean, you're standing, and that's another thing that plays into that, how to entertain. Because, I mean, we're rocking in a boardroom at 2 p.m. These people are being pulled away from a busy, like, I have to get this account done. And it's like, well, you have to come hear this band with long hair in the studio. Okay. And they're all sitting there, and you can tell the ones are just like, and you just play, and you're like, I know you guys don't want to be here. So this is what we do. And you have fun with it, and we're able to entertain. And if you can entertain in a beige boardroom, then you're doing all right. And we were. And we had 4 really great, strong personalities that could do that. And the montage team were great. The leadership was just still old school. It was just like, okay, you have to go through the front doors of radio. Yeah. And now you see bands like the Cadillac 3 and things like that, which is what we wanted to do in 05, 06. I mean, and we knew that. And that's one thing I'm really proud of, is that we knew exactly what we were and what we wanted to do. We just weren't able to get that Rubik's Cube to all be the same color on each side. And it just didn't happen. But we still have pockets of fans down there, and we still do shows, a couple of 3 shows a year where it's like, oh, wow, they really like us in Wisconsin. Oh, yeah, you're just as big as cheese, eh?
Do you think, obviously the Roadhammer's been really successful, but do you think, looking back, it was too early? Or do you think, a few years later, now that the change with the internet and all those social media things that
we've talked about this, and I don't think it's one of those things like, you go through life, it's like, oh, you can't have regrets and all that. And you can't, because if I were to retool it, I'd say, oh, wow, it'd be great to come out now. But no, because when we came out, we were really cutting edge sound wise compared to what was going on radio. Like, we were really rough around the edges and all that. And now we're not, or our stuff then, bring it now. It's like Eric Church is way more rock and roll than we were.
Yeah.
But at the time we were, and so that gave us a little boost. And, it's, and our live show too, it was way more rock and roll than any other country band at the time. Little Texas would have been our contemporaries, and they weren't outrageous on stage, right? They were just had long hair, and that's about it, or whatever, So no, I don't think it was one of those things. It's a great time that happened, and we still are touring, still recording just now. So it's not. Yeah, I don't think you can. You can't retool the past, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The Hammer thing started out as a concept record just for fun, and I got into doing, because again, back to that whole marketing thing, right? I started researching how many truckers there are in the commercial vehicle industry, or I was going to say truck industry, but it's more than that. Like, people who drive for a living, any size of vehicle is the number one employer in the world. Yeah. So whether you're a pizza driver, or you're an Uber driver, or a cab, or a truck, or whatever. And so I was like, this could be great, because that's what we wanted the Hammers to be, right?
Yeah.
And so Paul did Convoy, like, that's our thing, But we didn't even think of doing the song Convoy. It wasn't like he stole a song. It wasn't anything like that.
Yeah.
It was just for TV.
Yeah, I remember there was something like that, and that now it makes total sense now.
And you know what? We this is funny. Okay, the Hammers have never recorded Convoy. We've never sang Convoy.
Yeah.
But we did a show in Arkansas, and it was for Burt Reynolds' funeral.
Yeah.
Somebody recreated the Cannonball Run from Texarkana to Atlanta, I guess, whatever it is. And we went down to play for this convention thing, and there are all these, Smokey and the Bandit fans and everything, and they were like, make sure you play Convoy, but we never. Oh, okay, sure. So we learned it for that. But we get requests like that all the time, like, make sure they play Convoy, eh? but we never did.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's almost it's such a big song.
It was a huge song.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm such an idiot for like, that's the one song we didn't do, but we could have done it on a second record, but Paul did it first, and he should have, because he did it great. I mean, it was awesome. But it's funny that those things happen. People get something in their head and it's just like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but we never
That's
did.
not our song.
Yeah, that's not it.
That's funny.
Yep.
So now, as Jason McCoy, is there any thoughts of doing another Jason McCoy album in the future?
It's interesting, certainly, I'm 48 and I'm not going up against the Keith Urbans of the world. And it's interesting. I've been writing and recording some stuff and, kind of dipping my toe in the pool here and there and threatening to people to make them produce something for me. But I do want to. I don't know what it should be. And it is a lifetime struggle. That's with me and everybody who knows me and probably every artist. It's like, I don't know what to do, because being in radio now, I really don't know what to do. And the reason being is because anything's possible at radio right now. So if that makes any sense to you, it's like the doors are wide open. There's no limitations. And I'm sitting here going, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter what age you are to some degree. I mean, it's a way younger format than it's ever been, the Kelsey Ballerinis and all that stuff. But there's also lots of other people on the charts who are, like Kenny Chesney is older than I am.
Yeah.
I know he's been around a long time and all that. I have too, but at a different scale. But if I put a record out, I don't want to do something that's going to be like a Ride Off in the Sunset record, and I'm just doing it because.
Yeah.
I want to do something that's cutting edge and cool and relevant, or something that's completely way off on the left that's just for me, and I don't know what that would be. So I don't really have a plan right now, but I am writing, and it's getting closer every day that I would do something. I'd certainly do it. I have no intention of doing anything that's kind of half-assed. It's got to be awesome.
Yeah.
I don't have any. It's not.
Well, it's not your style to do something.
I guess, but I've got to nitpick it and minutia it to perfection and kill everything. No, but I hear our church, right? And I get really excited about that kind of stuff and all that stuff Jay Joyce does. Like, I really like it. It's awesome. Yeah. And Scott Baggett's a lot like that too, where he's just kind of, he's like a mad scientist in his lab and everything's kind of Frankenstein-y and it's like, it's neat because he's creating all the time. It's not just like, well, here's a song, we're just going to put it out on the charts, right? So, yeah, I'd like to. I guess a long answer, longer. Yeah, I'd like to.
We should.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, I think it'd be great.
But I've been writing lots. So.
And what about the Ronehammers? Any?
Yeah, we're actually just making plans to. We've got 3 tunes right now that we're getting ready to record, and it's a different process now recording because it used to be, hey, we're going to book a studio and track drums and blah blah blah. And a couple of these tunes we've already done demos on, so we have the drums. We're going to use those drums because we like them. Then we're going to upgrade all the other tracks and re-sing it and all that kind of stuff. And some of the stuff has drum loops, and it's pretty much done. It's just and some of them aren't for radio, right? Like we got a few that it's really we're going to be pushing more Spotify stuff or whatever, and. We just released that Zamboni song. We're doing a contest with Tim Hortons and all that jazz, a hockey song. And we're always doing stuff. There's always something. Yeah,
it's interesting because the wheels just keep turning, right? And there's always something new to do and always something different around the corner. And
I always said I'd never be 48, still doing this, right? It's like, I'm going to retire and, get a grown-up job, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I'm telling fart jokes on the radio and then making up stuff that rhymes in the afternoon. Like, come on, it's what I do. I'm finally at 48 facing the fact that I might be a musician.
Yeah, it's possible.
It's possible I might be a musician for a living. It's kind of weird, but it's hard to say out loud.
It's kind of weird because you grew up and you're a musician, singer, or whatever, but in your mind, you don't really consider yourself that, right? Or you are, but it's hard to define yourself. Someone asks, well, what do you do? And it's just sort of like, well, play guitar, sing. Well, I got this, I got that, and
you're a musician, you're a producer. You got the show at the barn. The whole farm and event center. You've got the stuff. You're doing radio, podcasts. You're doing all these things. And so, what do you do? Well, I'm in the music business. It's like
That's generally what I say. I'm in the music industry. And leave it at that.
Isn't it strange though? But I've never really considered myself a musician, and I don't say that out of this isn't trying to put myself down, but I'm not, like a guy like Paul Chapman, guitar player extraordinaire, he's a musician. I mean, he's a musician. You're a fiddle, you're a violin musician. Certain people have their things, and mine was always a means to an end. I'd learned to be able to do what I need to do to entertain. So I say I'm an entertainer. And then I get to put everything under that. So and songs for the most part for me are a means to an end as well. So I write a song, I learn to play guitar and, buy some cowboy boots so I can entertain, because that's what I like to do.
I was going to tell a story. I was thinking about different things on the way up here. God, I don't remember the year. It must have been...
Do I want to hear this?
Yeah. When we went down to the NAMM show in LA, and then we went up to Bakersfield.
Oh, yeah. So if people don't know this, it was actually Oildale, because Bakersfield is the home of Merle Haggard and Buck Owens, of course. So these are my idols. So we went to the NAMM show in LA, or where was it, at the convention center?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. It was downtown at that time, I think.
Yeah. And so we go, and I think we both had short frosted tip hair and, pleather jackets and, fancy shoes and jeans and all that. So go up to Bakersfield and then more than that, just to see Buck's place and all that stuff. But then more than that, we wanted to go to Oildale, which is where Merle used to hang and live and play. So we go to this really rough club. And we go into this place, and all that's there is plaid jackets and guys, chewing tobacco and spitting on the plywood floor, and
there's a band playing, right?
With a cool country, dyed in the wool country.
But
band.
it was still it wasn't even evening. It was
like Tuesday at 4 or something.
Yeah,
it was everybody's drinking warm draft and cussing, and this one lady comes over to us, and she was pretty sure that we were boyfriend and boyfriend, and and we're like, wait a minute, and then so we took off our jackets and hopped up and played every Merle Haggard song we could. It was like, yeah, we're manly men. Rawr. Ignore the frosted tip hair and the acid wash jeans.
I know it's either we're going to get the crap beat out of us, or else we're going to go up on stage and prove that we're men.
That's right, and we did, and we did.
Yeah, I think about that every time I go down to the NAMM show. Like, I remember that time.
Oh, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
So your radio stuff that you're doing now, it's came about. What was? I know you were mentioning earlier you were doing lots of radio kind of fill-in spots on the road and that, and then the whole Kicks thing came about.
Yeah, so a friend named Peter down in Rogers in Kitchener there, they asked me to sit in with their afternoon show, and I did that for a month, and it was great. And at the end of that, they offered me a gig, and I just couldn't move, They didn't define what the gig would be, but they had a couple ideas and some things they wanted to do, right? So I would have had to move to Kitchener. I just couldn't. And it was really hard to turn down because I really wanted to segue into radio because I like it, and it was a steady gig, and it's fun. And it was a big company. So I'm getting all bummed out, and I come home and I'm telling Treen, and she's an emerge nurse, right? And so she works at the Midland Hospital, but 30 minutes away. So she's kind of sitting with me, and she's like, well, there might be another opportunity, but too bad, you tried it, and we just couldn't make it all work, and that's fine, and whatever. So wasn't a few days later, she goes into work, and it was a night shift, and Paul Larsh owned 2 Kick stations, one up in Sudbury, Orillia, and then he has 2 dock stations, Barrie and Owen Sound, and Midland and Owen Sound. So anyway, she gets a call down to one of the rooms. Somebody got bit by a Massasauga rattler. They were up at their cottage. Walks into the room, and it's Paul. He's got a snake bite on his hand, And so don't get too many of those, right? And Treen and I know Paul very well, him and his wife. And anyway, so she's treating him, and he goes, oh, sorry, before we get into this, I came home, and I was all bummed out I couldn't take that Kitchener gig because Jack Latimer had been at Kicks forever, and I was like, he's not going anywhere because he is Kicks, And there's Jack, but what a great gig that would be, because it's right near the house here, and I'm a big Kicks fan, and they've always supported me musically, and it's like a family, right? So I was like, oh, what a bummer. So she's in, she sees Paul in there, she's working on his rattlesnake bite, and he goes, so is Jason doing any radio, or would he ever consider that kind of thing? Or She goes, oh yeah, he still does. He was just doing some. And he goes, yeah, because, well, Jack wants to retire. And we were wanting to ask him. We just didn't know if he'd be interested in doing that kind of thing. So I was like, would I? So I went in and I sat with Jack and Carrie. I did Mondays with them for, close to a year. I'd do every Monday.
Oh, yeah.
And learned the ropes from Jack. And then just a year ago, so it was Valentine's Day, he retired. And so from September to Valentine's Day of that preceding year, I was with them every day. So, I mean, talking about learning from the best. I mean, he's the smoothest ever.
Yeah.
And he just knows everybody and everything about radio. So, and then Carrie, my co-host, who's been with Jack for many, many years, she's probably, you couldn't have a better co-host because she's been doing this for many, many years. And she's engaged, like, not just on the national level with the music and all that kind of stuff, but the local stuff. She's just all about it. And I have a hard time sometimes connecting the stories with what I should be talking about on radio and that, but she just finds a vein and goes for it. And then I just follow her, and it's a fun show.
So that must have been a tough transition with sleep.
Oh my gosh, it's still tough.
Yeah.
It's the hardest part is like, I mean, I whine about getting up early, and I've actually stopped because, you know, it hit me one day when I'm going up to Tim Hortons at 4 a.m. going, I can't believe I have to get up that early. There's this poor girl behind the counter who's been there all night.
Yeah.
You know, and you start talking, you're all in the same kind of early morning club, right? So I get talking to her, and she's like, oh yeah, I leave here and then I'm working on my school after, this and during the day. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to shut up because, I got a great gig. And it is early, but I always said to Trine, even when we were younger, like, I love getting up in the morning, but I have to have a reason, or I don't,
Yeah.
Now I have a reason. I'm a morning guy. If I'm told if you said we have to get on a plane at 5 a.m., I'd be down at the airport at 3, no problem.
Yeah.
But if I don't have to, I sleep in the whole time. So, and it is a little hard on the body, though. I'm starting to get into a bit of a different clock reset. The thing I find that's hard is at nighttime, my kids are getting older, and their ambitions go into the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock range,
Yeah.
and I'm a potato at that point. So
Yeah.
I'm out at 7:38. I'm starting to fall asleep.
Yeah.
So I got old man syndrome, but it's a great gig.
Must be difficult when you get to summer and doing lots of festival gigs and up late. But I guess once you get on that drive, you kind of kick in a little bit of an adrenaline. But
at times,
yeah,
it's who pays for it is the family, because I'll do the show, and invariably with the Hammer shows, I'll take off from the show on Friday. I'll go to the airport and we'll play a gig on Friday night, Saturday night, and then I'll come home Sunday. I'll get home in the evening, and then I'm up at 3 a.m. on Monday.
Yeah.
And then Monday afternoon, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm just a total jerk at home because I'm just like, who put their shoes there? It's like, Dad, by the end of the summer, I'm getting crazy. But that lack of sleep is really, it's tough to take.
Yeah. So 2 kids.
Yeah. 2 dogs, 2 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like being a dad, like.
What's it like?
Yeah.
Well, when there's up to a certain age, it's great because you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof. And now my daughter's 12, and I didn't realize how stupid I am until she told me. She's the problem is they get so smart so quick.
Yeah.
But she's starting to turn into a teenager. So I mean, she's definitely getting a bit of attitude and stuff. But it's still great, and it's.
Do you have any music ambitions at all?
We force them to practice piano.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we've forced upon them because I think it's great. It's a good discipline. Caleb is pretty natural at the music thing. I mean, as far as groove goes, him and I have written a couple little songs together, and he's just got a ear where he'll sit at the piano, he'll monkey about and have fun, and they both have a good beat. Grace can play; they can both play kind of drums, Grace is really good at creative stuff, but on a more of a bigger level. She'll want to write a play, or she'll want to, make up plays and direct it. And, so I either say she's going to be a director of a theater or a dictator of a small country. One or the other.
Yeah.
She'll probably take over a small country, but she likes to organize and do. And I see a lot of me and her doing that. It's like, she doesn't just want to, create a play. She wants to get all her friends in, and then we'll make flyers and we'll do, that kind of stuff. So she likes to create in a different way.
That's cool. A couple more questions for you. Out of all the things you do, if you look back over the years, if you just had to pick one thing out of all of them, you say, okay, now you can't play the guitar, you can only sing, or you can only write, or you can only record, you can do
that question.
All those things. If you stripped everything and say you can only pick one thing, what do you think that one
Probably
thing would be?
songwrite.
Yeah.
Because you can, it's like being an actor, right? You can slide into anything. You can write a heavy metal song, or you can write a country ballad or a pop song or whatever. And I think that's also a little age resistant too, right? Like, I mean, performing is a kind of a young person's game in a lot of ways. And guitar playing is, a little age restrictive because, sometimes the fingers don't work like they used to. Stuff like that, right? You hear of guys, I mean, not me, but you hear older guys talking like this. And, but songwriting is one of those things that, Paul McCartney's still writing songs, and they're still pretty cool tunes, right? And I think as well, the thing I like about songwriting is it's almost like lyrical Tetris or linguistic acrobatics. Like, it's like a little, sometimes writing can be real serious kind of stuff with deep lyrics and that, but a lot of times it can be just fun little twists of phrases and stuff. I love those double meaning kind of things. And you pick more of those up as you go along. It's like picking up, burrs across the field or something as you go through life. You've got these little sayings and stuff, you know? Like a guy down in Nashville, right, with a lot, Phil O'Donnell. He's from Canada, but he swear he's from Nashville, Tennessee. He's just got that accent now. He's been there so long. Yeah. He's got all these funny sayings like, oh man, I was trying to figure out my telephone. I was as confused as a chicken watching a card trick. And I'm just, or it's like, man, you play that chord and I'm just sitting here looking at you like a calf looks at a new gate. It's like, how do you pick those up? And that's just life, you just got those sayings. And I love those twists of phrases that we come up with stuff. And it's fun. It keeps your chops up when you write. More you write, the better your chops are at, just twisting those phrases and messing with linguistics. And it's fun.
Yeah. As far as performing, you obviously performed a lot of places all over the world. Do you have any on your bucket list that you still would like to perform? I know you've done the Opry and different things, but is there any venue or any place that you always wanted to perform at and haven't yet?
You know what? Not a specific venue probably, but I would really like to, you were talking about recording and all that. I'd like to record again to give me a means to an end, like a reason to play theaters again. Because with a few years under my belt now with the Hammers and all that, and I'm kind of itching to do acoustic, three-piece kind of acoustic storytelling, like just a little bit of humor and just nothing big and fancy, but a really great 3-4-piece acoustic-y kind of thing. I don't know why. I don't know to what degree or what reason. I don't care if it's 100 people or 1,000. Like, it doesn't matter. I just really would like to do a run of X amount of dates every year and just say, okay, this month you always do that. And I really enjoy that. So I've waited a long time to figure out what I really enjoy in the performing world. And that's exactly what I like. And I don't care if they're fancy theaters or they're community joints or what, like, it's just fun. And I like to meet the people in the town and all that stuff that I didn't really stop and smell the roses doing before. And I really enjoy that. That would be fun.
I've got an idea for you. So we'll chat after the
podcast. Right, great.
Let's make a plan.
So looking at Jason McCoy 5-10 years, do you look that far out?
Oh yeah. Actually, that's one of my problems is I lay in bed at night and make plans and plans and plans and plans and plans and plans and plans. And then I worry. Then my wife says, go to bed. So I guess I try to shut that off now because when I do that, what happens is I'll go, I'm going to write this song about such and such. And then I'm going to have to see if I can get a certain marketing thing involved like that I was talking about. And then we'd have to go on the road, but I think we'd have to work with such and such artists. And then I'd do all these venues and then I want to work with such and such. And then the radio would have to, and then I go like, yeah, but that won't work. And then I unravel the whole thing and go, yeah, it's never going to work. So if I stop that and I just try to work on what's in front of me and go, well, that's a really cool song. Oh, we should get so-and-so to play a guitar on that and just let it unravel like it's supposed to. You know, what's happened most of the time in my life is it does okay. Like it never really hit the ditch. It's okay. Let it go. Like some don't turn into hits. Some do. Some don't see the light of day. Some do. But when I overplan like 5-10 years, it never works, because I couldn't have predicted the best things that have ever happened to me. I didn't even see coming.
Yeah.
And that's the same with all of us. You can't plan on certain relationships, or you're still being alive or still doing what you love to do. And I couldn't have predicted being in radio. And it's been a wonderful thing. So I try to work toward it, but I didn't say, I'm going to be a morning show guy at Kicks. So I want my own radio show. It wouldn't have happened because I would have maybe planned wrong or tried to force it.
It's those, always find it's like those 10-year cycles you go through, and all of a sudden another 10 years go by and you look back and say, wow, I'm doing something completely different than I thought I was going to be doing.
As long as I get another 10-year cycle.
Yeah.
It's neat. It's neat.
Well, it's been a great pleasure chatting.
Thank you.
And I look back, I'm not trying to figure how long I played fiddle in your band, but it was several years.
There's about 5 years, felt like 50 though.
Yeah, 40 maybe. No, it was neat. I look back and there was a lot of steps that happened to me, and I think road managing, kind of stepping up into that role first time was with you.
Oh, really?
I just remember.
Sorry, man.
Yeah, I know. And then since then, that's been a big chunk of my life is advancing shows and
producing your own shows. I mean, you have all the time with the family, but I mean, that's just in your makeup. You're an organizer.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, no, I look back and there's a lot of fond memories, and there's a lot of great shows we did, and I really, really enjoyed it. And
it's fun.
And I'm really happy with where you are in your career. You've done super well, and you seem like you're in a great place. So
yeah, it's been good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I had a lot of fond memories too, and it's amazing. A lot of friendships that started so long ago, and it's part of your life. It's pretty wild to still have those.
Yeah, and it's kind of neat, and I think this musician world was where, I haven't seen a whole lot of you over the last bunch of years. Or you've been doing your thing, I'm doing my thing, but then you can step right in.
That's amazing. Just
like it's
bang, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's 6 degrees of separation. You kind of keep in touch with people through others as well.
Yeah.
It's like, I just went and I saw Darren at such and such, or you're just talking about how you were at Aaron Pritchett's show,
Yeah.
We're talking about musicians we all know, and it's one living, breathing family you get to stay plugged into.
Yeah. So people want to stay in touch with Jason. What's the best way to find out what Jason's doing all the time?
I don't know. Probably Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. Okay. Yeah, that's sort of the best. I mean, the website, jasonmccoy.com, but I mean, it's really, websites are what they are. It just redirects you to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
They all say the same thing. It's just whichever one you want.
Biography. Well, when he first changed the world with his soft, velvety voice. Oh, wait. No, that's not me.
Wrong Jason McCoy.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been a blast, and thanks again.
Thank you, Darren.
And we'll chat real soon.
Right on.
Thanks.